What if everything you thought was fantasy actually had roots in reality? What if the monsters, spirits, and impossible creatures from ancient myths weren't just stories told around campfires, but humanity's way of processing encounters with something they couldn't quite understand? There's an old saying that what's old can't be told, and what's told can't always be shown to the public eye. Some truths hide in plain sight, buried in ancient stories and whispered through generations. Long before written history, long before kingdoms rose or fell, there were beings. Mysterious, powerful, and deeply woven into humanity's earliest memories. These weren't just bedtime stories. Every culture on Earth, separated by oceans and mountains, somehow developed strikingly similar tales of creatures that walked the boundary between worlds, between human and animal, between flesh and spirit, between the known and the unknowable. And here's what makes it fascinating. These beings appear everywhere, in every corner of the globe, taking forms that blur reality itself. Each culture describes them differently, yet the similarities hint at something older and deeper than mere imagination. Let's start with the hybrids, beings that merge human intelligence with the raw power of animals. The Centaur stands as one of the most iconic, half-human, half-horse, forever caught between civilization and wilderness. They symbolize the eternal struggle between reason and instinct, between our higher nature and our primal urges. Ancient Greeks didn't just invent them randomly. They represented something fundamental about human nature itself. Then there's the Griffin, a lion's powerful body crowned with an eagle's majestic wings. These weren't mindless beasts in the stories. They were guardians of treasures and sacred places, protectors of what shouldn't be disturbed. Imagine encountering something like that in an ancient world where every mountain could hide danger, and every cave could contain wonders. The Sphinx might be even more intriguing. Human-faced, lion-bodied, sitting at the crossroads asking riddles that determined life or death. This wasn't just a monster. It was a test, a gatekeeper between ignorance and knowledge. The ancient world understood that wisdom often came with a price, and the Sphinx embodied that truth perfectly. But hybrids are just the beginning. Serpents and dragons appear in virtually every ancient culture, often representing the same concepts: wisdom, danger, divine power, the duality of creation and destruction. The Naga from Asian mythology exemplifies this perfectly. Half human, half serpent. These beings controlled water, wealth, and hidden realms beneath the earth. They could be benevolent protectors or terrible enemies. They represented the mystery of what lay beneath the surface, both literally in underground caverns and metaphorically in the depths of knowledge. The Basilisk took serpent mythology to terrifying heights. Known as the king of serpents, it possessed a gaze that could kill. Just looking at it meant death. Ancient people needed explanations for sudden, unexplained deaths. The Basilisk provided one that made sense in their worldview. Dragons are perhaps the most universal of all mythological creatures. They appear in European castles, Chinese palaces, Mesoamerican temples, and African folklore. Despite vast distances and zero contact between these cultures, they all independently developed dragon myths. These weren't identical, but the core concept remained. Massive, serpentine, powerful beings that represented chaos, magic, and forces beyond human control, moving beyond physical hybrids. Ancient peoples populated their world with spirits and humanoid entities. Some protected, some terrorized, and some simply existed in the spaces between. In Central America, the Caudillo roams, a dog-goat hybrid spirit that appears to travelers at night. Some versions protect innocent people, while others lead the wicked to their doom. This duality appears again and again in mythology. The idea that supernatural beings respond to human morality. The Gorgons of Greek mythology, with their snake hair and petrifying gaze, represented something deeper than simple monsters. Medusa, the most famous Gorgon, was once beautiful before her transformation. Her story speaks to themes of punishment, transformation, and the danger of looking too closely at things beyond mortal comprehension. The Lamashu from Mesopotamia served as massive protective guardians, human heads representing intelligence, lion bodies representing power, and wings representing divine nature. These weren't hidden creatures of darkness. They stood proudly at city gates and palace entrances, announcing that this space was protected by forces, both earthly and celestial. Then we have the true monsters, the beasts that haunted nightmares and explained natural disasters or unexplored territories. The Kraken terrorized sailors for centuries. A sea monster so massive it could wrap tentacles around entire ships and drag them to the depths, in a world where the ocean was largely unmapped and deeply dangerous. The Crockett explained why ships sometimes simply vanished without a trace. The Minotaur, trapped in its labyrinth, half man and half bull, represented the consequences of hubris and unnatural acts. It was a guardian, yes, but also a prisoner, a reminder that some experiments shouldn't be conducted, and some boundaries shouldn't be crossed. Cerberus, the three-headed dog guarding the underworld, ensured that the dead stayed dead, and the living stayed away. Every culture needed an explanation for why we can't visit the realm of the dead and return. Cerberus provided that answer with terrifying efficiency. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Many beings we dismiss as pure fantasy actually have roots in reality. Ancient people weren't stupid. They were trying to make sense of their world with the knowledge they had. Cyclopes, the one-eyed giants, might have originated from a simple misunderstanding. When ancient peoples discovered mammoth skulls, they saw a massive skull with a single large central hole. They didn't know this was where the trunk attached. To them, it looked like the eye socket of a giant one-eyed creature. Suddenly, the myth makes perfect sense. Mermaids likely emerged from sailors spending months at sea, spotting manatees or dugongs from a distance. Add isolation, longing for home, and the distorting effects of waves and light, and you get beautiful women with fish tails instead of the rotund marine mammals they actually were. Dire wolves weren't mythological at all. They were real prehistoric predators that lived alongside early humans. The stories persisted long after the creatures went extinct, transforming from memory into legend. This is the crucial point. Ancient stories weren't always fiction. They were humanity's earliest attempts at science, history, and psychology. When people encountered mammoth bones, they created giants. When they found dinosaur fossils, they imagined dragons. When they saw unusual weather patterns or natural disasters, they attributed them to angry spirits or massive beasts. These creatures served practical purposes too. They taught lessons, established boundaries, and created shared cultural identity. The monster in the forest kept children from wandering too far. The spirit in the river explained why someone drowned. The dragon in the mountain explained volcanic activity. We look back now with modern knowledge and smile at these old stories, but our ancestors were doing exactly what we do today. They were trying to explain their world, to find patterns in chaos, to give meaning to the unexplainable. They just used the tools and knowledge available to them, and perhaps, just perhaps, some of those old stories contain kernels of truth we've forgotten. Perhaps some of those creatures were real in ways we don't yet understand. Perhaps the line between myth and reality is thinner than we think. Because, as that old saying reminds us, what's old can't always be told, and what's told can't always be shown to the public eye. Some truths remain hidden, waiting in ancient texts and whispered tales, ready for those willing to look beyond the obvious and see what our ancestors were really trying to tell us.